Okay, so your bell ringer, she's done. So let's dive into our guided notes. So what are we going to do today? Today says I can debate the societal advancements in renewable energy sources. So that's just a fancy way of saying we are going to talk about renewable energy sources and then talk about the advantages, so the good or positive things, and the disadvantages, the not so good, the cons of each resource. Okay, so just a reminder, renewable resources. These are those natural resources that can continually be replaced naturally in nature. So we're never going to run out of these things. This is our wind, our sunlight, the heat from the inside of the earth, all the ones we talked about last week. So, like I said, we're going to talk about the specific advantages, so good things and not so good things about each resource. And we already really broke down the details, for the most part, the details of each of these resources. So today shouldn't be anything too crazy. So the first one is solar energy. We remember that when we see the word solar, we are talking about the sun. So this is when we are converting light energy into electricity. So we're taking light energy into electricity. So we're going to use these with things called solar panels, or you might see solar cells. You might see that too. So certain advantages is solar energy is non-polluting. So we remember pollution is when you're releasing harmful chemicals or harmful substances into the air or the water or the ground and causing it to be harmed and dirtied. So with solar energy or solar panels, none of that is happening. No chemicals are being released into anything. It's super clean. Another advantage, and this one, I'm only going to say it for this one because this advantage is for every single renewable resource we're going to talk about today. It is available in the United States, meaning if you really want to go out and buy a solar panel, you can. So that's another advantage, of course. We can access it, which is pretty nice. Some disadvantages of solar energy: less energy on a cloudy day. So obviously if it's not as sunny, you have less light energy available to transform into electricity. So that's exactly why you don't get energy at night either. So you need a lot of sun. So it doesn't have to constantly have the sun be up for electricity to happen. Usually if you have like enough sunlight, it can store up some extra electricity, so then you do have it at the nighttime. But if you are in a place where it's cloudy all the time, solar energy may not be the renewable resource for you because you're not going to get a whole lot of electricity because you need those rays of sunshine to make it happen. Also, it's kind of expensive. Look into it. Buying a solar panel, not cheap. It's super expensive to use, and they also need a large surface area, meaning a lot of space. You need a big solar panel to produce a lot of energy. So like if you want to, like this picture right here, use it for your house, you're going to need a lot of solar panels. And maybe you think that looks good on your house. Maybe you think it's ugly. Up to you. But if you want to power a lot of buildings with a lot of electricity, you need a lot of space for those solar panels, just like this over here. So yeah, good things, not so good things. Then we have that wind energy. This is when we are using those wind turbines. And remember, when there's a bunch of them, we call that a wind farm. We're just transforming that energy produced by the wind and converting that into electricity. So again, another good thing about this: non-polluting, no pollution, no bad chemicals released with wind turbines. And they're also, this is a really good thing, they're inexpensive. So the process of creating a wind turbine and keeping it going, it's not nearly as expensive as it is to use solar energy. So wind turbines are relatively cheap when we're talking about renewable resources. So that's pretty cool. Some disadvantages: just like with solar energy, you need a lot of sun. For wind energy, you need a lot of wind. So if you're in a place that the wind doesn't blow too much, probably can't use wind turbines as well. Also, it says that the best sites for wind farms, so this is where you have all those wind turbines, are typically far away from urban areas. Urban areas meaning cities. So if you live in a city, you're not going to have close access to a wind farm because you need a lot of flat open space, like open fields. So really out here, if we wanted to build a wind farm, would probably be all right. We've got some big open spaces. But if you live in Memphis, you may not have good enough access to use wind energy. Also, this one's kind of weird. It can really hurt bird populations. So these windmills, this is going to sound kind of brutal, but these windmills, when they are moving, it can chop up a bird. I know that's kind of gross, but it's true. So this can easily physically hurt a bird, and also some birds try to build their nests on top of them, and that's not a very good spot. They can get electrocuted. They can, again, get hurt by the blades on the wind turbines. So a lot of birds tend to get hurt by these wind turbines. But if you don't care about birds, this one might be the one for you. Okay, next we are talking about water energy. So this is that hydroelectric power. So remember, when you see hydro, we're thinking water. So this is when we are making electricity from flowing water flowing through that dam, okay? So some advantages, again, it's non-polluting. That is usually the norm with the renewable resources. They're not releasing that carbon dioxide, so it's much cleaner. So that's a positive thing. However, there are some more disadvantages with that hydroelectric power. So you need to have a fast-flowing river for this to work, because you can't just have still water, because that water has to be flowing and moving so it can turn this turbine and cause this generator to pop on, which is what's going to actually make the electricity. So you need a fast-flowing river, typically a big fast-flowing river like this one, not some wimpy little stream somewhere, right? Also, it can have a negative impact on aquatic ecosystems. So this one is very similar to the wind energy, how it can hurt the birds. Same thing here. When we say aquatic just means they live in water. Like you think aquarium is like a big fish tank. Aquatic means that they're whatever living in the water. So the ecosystem in that river can be harmed, because think about it, you're totally doing construction right in the middle of their little habitat. You can cut off fish from going from one spot of the river to the other, or other living things in the river, so it can leave a negative impact. You can kill a lot of fish this way. It's just how it works. Also, typically what keeps a river moving quickly is if you have long periods of rain. So if it rains a lot, that tends to make the river rise and run a little bit faster. So if you don't have rain for a long time, the speed that the river is moving is going to slow down a ton. So you might not get nearly as much electricity, because you really need that fast flowing water. So yeah, water energy. Two more. Here's that geothermal energy. And remember, geo means earth and therm means heat. So we're talking about heat from inside of the earth. So we are gathering that heat and transforming it into electricity, because that heat is going to turn water into steam. And the steam is what is the same thing with the dams and the hydroelectric energy. The steam is what's going to turn these turbines to make these generators go and produce that electricity. Kind of cool. Some advantages, there is still very little pollution. Here we're releasing a little bit of stuff into the air, but not nearly as much as you would see with the fossil fuels. So the burning of that coal, oil, natural gas, that releases a ton of carbon dioxide. This little bit is being released, but not nearly as much. It's still way better. The disadvantages is that you typically are going to use these in areas where there is a lot of tectonic activity. So what we mean by that is, since we're getting heat from the magma inside of the earth, it's a lot easier to be in a location near where you would typically think a volcano would be, so where there's a lot of that magma being moved around and it's really hot, closer to the surface of the earth. So somewhere where you have a lot of tectonic activity is where you're typically going to see these being used. Okay, so again, habitat destruction, it seems to be a theme here. When you're drilling down, because they have to drill down into the ground to access the magma, obviously. So this drilling can also hurt some habitats. Obviously, look here, this is a pretty big plant. So wherever certain animals and plants are naturally living here, you're kind of destroying their habitats when you are building these plants. Okay. Last one is that biomass. Remember, bio means life. So this is when we are burning up organic material. And remember, organic material, that remains of something that was once alive. So this could be food scraps or your dead smaller animals or animal poop or garbage or dead leaves or sticks. Any type of organic matter, we're going to burn them up to create energy or to produce electricity. So some advantages is if there is a lot of organic material in those landfills, so where we keep all of our garbage, we can reduce the amount that is there by burning it instead. So think about how many times you throw like your banana peel or whatever into the garbage can. Instead, it would be burned and used for electricity. So that's kind of cool. Would reduce the amount of stuff inside a landfill. However, with biomass, there is a decent amount of air pollution that's going to happen with the biomass. Still not quite as the fossil fuels when we're burning those fossil fuels, but enough that it's still a little bit of a concern. So the main thing with biomass that people love about it is since you are using trees or wood, those are things that typically store carbon dioxide. We talked about that with the greenhouse effect, and we were talking about deforestation, how cutting down those trees releases that carbon dioxide. So some people think, okay, since we're burning the trees and it's releasing those carbon dioxide and we just replant the trees are just going to soak back up all the carbon dioxide that the power plant releases. So it's just this beautiful cycle, which is half true, half not true, because we're still burning more carbon dioxide than the trees can properly take in and suck up. And also, we're burning at a faster rate than trees can even be planted. So it takes a while for a tree to grow up. So it still doesn't fully work. So you still have a little bit of air pollution or that carbon dioxide being released back into the air, into the atmosphere. Also, it's a little expensive to transport this organic material back and forth from power plant to power plant, because think about a garbage man's route. Now we got a whole nother route where we got to take all these organic materials and separate them out and then take them to the power plant. And usually by the time all that happens, the amount of energy and fossil fuels you use to gas all of the trucks and everything required to transport the organic material to the plant, you just use the same amount of fossil fuels, so it's kind of silly, and that gets expensive to go back and forth like that. So that's also a disadvantage. Okay, that's it. So those were all the advantages and disadvantages of our renewable resources. So if you have any questions, hit me up. I can walk you through this again, and we'll practice on tomorrow.